All right, so I'm just going to reintroduce myself so that the recording captures everything. Again, my name is Kerry-Ann Joseph-McLean. Live here in Ajax, Ontario with my husband. Thank you once again, Corna, for introducing me to this health talk that we have every single week. Starting from the beginning of this year, it was something we wanted to do. And I found that this year for 2025 was the best time for us. We experienced a lot of deaths in our family the year before and illnesses as well. So being proactive with that, we want to be able to share what we know, because whatever you have within you, you want to also gift it to others, because if you don't share your gifts, your talents with others, it sort of goes with you on the wayside, and people don't really learn because they don't share that wealth. Now, wealth can come in many forms, but in this case, I'll be sharing this with you. Wealth comes in the form of health. And so again, wonderful to have you here on this platform, a health talk. We're going to do a presentation today. It's all about osteoporosis and also other illnesses or conditions that may impact your osteoporosis. If you know someone who are being told that they may have it or have early stages or late stages, there's also ways that you can do sort of implement into your everyday health journey if you're advised to take pharmaceuticals in a way to combat this progressive disease or illness. I'm going to share with you my slide because I'm actually all about presentation. I'm a visual person. If you are, then great. Makes it easier for me. Just give me 1 second to do this. I'm going to share my screen. And of course, I want to make sure that you can see my slides. So when I do this, I'm going to ask each of you, one of you, just to put a 1 in the chat once I share it. Here we go, share. So someone put a 1 in the chat for me just to let me know that you can see the slides I'm sharing. Just want to confirm. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And please feel free if you have questions, we can ask at the end, or if you want to put it in the comments in the chat section, I'll be able to review it and answer for you if you're particularly shy. So we know that osteoporosis is something, especially women, have been told can come upon you depending on if it's genetics or if it's through stages of your life. But I want to also just bring to your attention a couple of things that I learned that I want to be able to share with you. So we know that osteoporosis can happen in different stages, but it can be impacted by other things like hypertension, postmenopausal, even gut health can impact your osteoporosis if you're on that path. So we know that as we go through different stages of life, if we're doing the things that can help us to be healthier, can actually lessen the risk, but the other things still to consider. So how do you know if you're at risk for osteoporosis? Either through your family doctor, if you don't have a family doctor, or you may not go to the doctor as frequent to be able to do any type of additional specialty test or screening that might be a high risk, but you're unaware. So we know osteoporosis, it weakens the bones. So it weakens the bones to the point that they can break easily. So it's called a silent disease because people who develop it may not notice any changes until a bone actually breaks. So usually a bone in the hip, the wrist, spine, so forth. And actually, as Cornell mentioned, I do like to put where I get all the information from, or most of it, and I get them through credible sites. So like, for example, a public medical library or even government sites that talk about health, both in Canada and the US. If you're outside of those countries, of course, each country has their library where you can actually get information of concerning particular situations or conditions. But I'm actually sharing this content as I've gathered information. I love collecting data, putting it into place where you can actually see it all at once. So we know, as I mentioned before, this osteoporosis is a silent disease. So it not only weakens the bones, it causes the bones to be thinner, less dense. And there are many different things that can happen. In some cases, I'll share with you later on, not just the natural age as you age. So if your bones are at one point dense and strong enough to support your weight, of course, you being told, or you may have a situation where you are at a risk for osteoporosis, then you need to do your due diligence. So things like lifestyle factors, like excessive consumption of alcohol, smoking, poor diet, lack of physical exercise can happen. even prolonged immobilization can happen, of course, if you've had a health condition where you're bedbound for long periods of time, or if you age, as you age, because you've become weaker, you're being more bedridden, or you have less mobility, that can actually sort of lessen your, or increase your risk of osteoporosis. Other things too, as chronic medical conditions can happen, like gastrointestinal disease, chronic pulmonary obstructive disease like COPD, which I spoke about two weeks ago on the Health Talk, asthma, which you won't think asthma is something that can be related to this, but it actually is part of your respiratory condition that you may have. Even things like rheumatoid arthritis, hyperthyroidism versus hypothyroidism. Things like excess calcium loss can happen, even if you have prolonged exposure or use of cortisoid steroids. So, for example, if you're asthmatic and you're taking these steroids, it not only weakens your heart, it actually also impacts your bones. It also can actually have other type of underlying conditions that you may not be aware of. Even rheumatoid arthritis can actually impact you with its osteoporosis. Cancer drugs for prostate cancer and other types of cancer, even anticonvulsants can actually impact you with osteoporosis, sort of like at risk for that. So what are the causes of osteoporosis? Well, one could be age, hormonal changes as women change and men change, of course, testosterone, hormones, and so forth. Deficient in vitamin D and calcium, and most people don't know they are. One of the things that I've actually learned along my life journey is that a lot of us don't know we are deficient because there's certain indicators we don't know about. For example, you may have achy joints, you may have, certain types of things happening to you, and you don't realize it's vitamin D deficiency. And of course, here in Canada, maybe other parts of the world, they don't normally screen you for if you're deficient in vitamin D. So, for example, myself, when I'm doing my full blood workup, I ask for that. There's a charge to get the vitamin D test done, but it's well worth it. If you're doing your blood work once a year, it's like $30, $35. You can tell right away if you're deficient. And then, of course, you know the right type of dosage to take because you're consuming the amounts which would be which would be equivalent to what a female would take versus a male. Calcium and vitamin D, those are things we don't know about, of course, until we're at the late stage where they've told you have a higher risk of brittle bones disease, so to speak. Your lifestyle, as we mentioned, things of like resistance training, or if you're doing things like I mentioned before, smoking and diet, low in fruits and vegetables can happen where your body's not getting enough nutrients. These can negatively impact your bone health and, of course, increase I call it brittle bones disease, which is osteoporosis. We talk about other things like symptoms, what to look out for, and keep in mind that people may have these type of conditions that may be related to other illnesses. But just to put things into perspective, if you sort of keep track of what you're experiencing and you sort of put two and two together, not for a self-diagnosis, but to be able to better articulate to your doctor what you're feeling so that they can give you the best educated suggestion as what to do to improve your health. So we know it's a silent disease, and of course, like stress. But however, there are some signs that will have like indicators of how your bones are sort of weakening. We know we sometimes think, okay, as you get older, you lose muscle mass, which may cause you to be weaker, but also your bones can be weakened as well. So things like back pain, that can cause a fracture or collapse of vertebrae. It could be from an injury, but other things as well. Height loss, we know that happens as you get older, especially if you're not doing resistance training and things like that to keep your core strong. Stooped posture, bone fractures can happen, even limited mobility, as I mentioned before, so difficulty moving, performing things without discomfort or pain, especially as your condition progresses if you have been diagnosed. So I mentioned before about medical conditions, so things that are chronic, so you have chronic disease. Could be anything like rheumatoid arthritis or any type of inflammatory condition. Diabetes could be also a risk factor as well for osteoporosis. For example, my mother had diabetes and she unfortunately got a stroke and other underlying condition when she passed. But in this case, she was immobile. So for her, she could have had a higher risk of osteoporosis, which she was not diagnosed with. But here's some of the conditions that I sort of want to put so have you visualized as to some of the things that may impact you. Long-term cortisol, as I mentioned, can also be a condition as well, can cause you to be at risk for that. But other signs you can look at is, for example, receding gums. So the jawline can lose density, so your gums can recede over time. If you're not seeing a doctor or a dentist regularly, let's say twice a year, so they can check your gums, you may not even realize that you have receding gums. When I was younger, I actually had receding gums, but I started using a toothpaste that had a superfood infused into it that helped me with that, but also for them to check your gums to make sure they can measure it to make sure that you're not at risk for osteoporosis. That's one of the indicators as well. People who are postmenopausal tend to have this as an early indicator. As you get older, your gums might recede. So this is also something you should also look out for. Weakened grip strength can happen. So for example, you find moments of time when your hands may not be as strong as you think. You may think, okay, it's age, but really could be an early sign, right? So no need to get yourself anxious about that, but just keep it in the back of the mind that this could be an indicator, but not the only thing to look out for, because there's many reasons why you might have lessened strength in your hands. Brittle nails as well could be a factor where you have insufficient nutrients like calcium. I actually do have softer nails. This is something that's hereditary in my mother's side. But again, I can tell just from my fingers alone. Sometimes you have these little white marks on your fingers, which could be an indicator as you have calcium deficiency, but other factors as well. So of course, have your doctor look at that to have you run some tests, vitamin D, and as well as other new protein that your body is lacking. Loss of bone density in dental x-rays can tell. So dentists can actually provide you with like direct feedback, because the x-rays are done like in the office on the spot, and they can tell you, this is what they're noticing. So of course they can actually give you the proper guidance to recommend that you go see your doctor to do additional tests on your bone health. Another thing as well, is to think if you're at risk of osteoporosis, is your gender and age, of course. Family history is one. So if, let's say, your family has a history of osteoporosis or other type of frailty, like in the fractures, like symptoms, a genetic factor could play a role. So of course, they may do a genetic test just to see if you are at risk, depending on the amount of people in your family that has been advised that they have osteoporosis or at risk for that. Your body composition, whether you're a small frame, low body weight, a higher risk. So you may be on the leaner side, but you may have a higher risk of osteoporosis. Having less bone mass to begin with puts you or the person that you may know at a disadvantage. A hormone imbalance can happen in different times. Like, for example, you may have thyroid condition, early menopause, could be an indicator for, osteoporosis. But things like you may have, of course, you may go through pregnancy, and post-pregnancy, of course, you may lose enough nutrients, or whilst you're pregnant. These could be other things to look out for, just to make sure that your hormone is not imbalanced. Of course, checking with your doctor to make sure that you're getting the right nutrients, maybe even a naturopathic doctor versus a traditional doctor who prescribes pharmaceutical medicine. Nutritional deficiency is one of those things that we also have to look out for. As I mentioned before, vitamin D is super, super important, has so many benefits, including protecting your bones. So what do we consider as bone health? Well, bone health can actually be linked to many things. Who would have thought that gut health can be related to your bone health? So the bone health related disorders, such as osteoporosis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, have been associated with the gut microbiota, so basically your gut. And so development risk of this could actually increase because you have a disruption. Another thing as well to consider, if you have or you know of individuals who have had things like IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, or IBS, chronic disease like that, they actually have a higher risk because, of course, their gut health may not be on par. So nutrient absorption is very important. Your body may be consuming nutrients for your body to fuel you like your regular food consumption, maybe taking vitamins, but if your gut is not aligned, it may not be able to absorb the nutrients that you're trying to give it. Your hormones might be off. You could have a metabolism issue. It could be many things. So that is something a wild guess as to how what's happening is you pay attention, track it down, journal it so that you actually can try to get yourself to a better version of you in your health capacity, in your health journey. We all want to have the ability to have the best a best type of like the healthy body, healthy version of us. But if your intestines, your microbiome, like if that influences how your bone absorbs, how your actually body absorbs nutrients, there is something that can actually disrupt that. So if you have an impaired gut, that's involving all of this disruption. This is something you may not know. As you're not a doctor, neither am I. So, of course, you need to be able to have someone check your gut. They're actual individuals who specifically are trained on healing the gut. There's something called a leaky gut syndrome that actually is not, I won't go into details here, but we actually had a presentation before about leaky gut syndrome and gut health as well as parasites. So there's different things that are connected because everything is connected in the body, right? From the hair follicle, from the top of your head to the sole of your feet, everything is connected, right? We don't even realize that sometimes. So how can healthy diets that include fiber and prebiotic foods and other things help you? Then these are things we can actually learn as I continue to explore this. So the disease typically evolves through several stages. So I mentioned the silent onset. Bone loss begins without noticeable symptoms. Symptomatic phase. So for example, as bone density continues to decrease, signs like bone pain, fractures may occur. Even if you're thinking that you're of a latter stage in your life, this can happen at any stage in your life. Depending on, of course, certain type of conditions. For example, genetics. So the advanced stage is characterized by frequent fractures, significant bone weakness, and chronic pain. So we know chronic pain can happen from different symptoms and conditions, for example, like fibromyalgia, lupus. You can have conditions, for example, symptoms like, arthritis. You can have other conditions that can impact you that may be similar in sort of symptoms because of the chronic pain. But again, you want to put things down, write it down so you sort of educate yourself. So you sort of pinpoint certain things that happen with you so you can discuss with your doctor. So the end stage of this particular of this osteoporosis can be quite severe. So it's pronounced as disability and life-altering complications, which is not only for the osteoporosis, but other things that are related to osteoporosis or sort of tied to it. So chronic pain and fractures is one of the things that we spoke about before. So at this stage, you may experience more severe, intense chronic pain with little or no relief, depending on what your severity is. So it's only due to fractures that you may have, your vertebrae collapsing or compress. It may happen throughout the day sporadically, especially if you're sitting or walking or moving or going to stairs too frequent or in between. My mother-in-law actually has this because she injured her vertebrae when she was working as a PSW many years ago, which didn't seem a big issue until she started aging. And so now she has sciatic and other things happening with her. But of course, bone loss in her health actually has been impacted. So the loss of mobility is a significant concern at the end of the stage. So due to these type of risk of fractures, we have to be super careful with the individuals who are going through this to make sure we safeguard them as best as we can. So the lack of movement also can be compounded because your muscle weakness, but then it's a catch-22 that you can't be too aggressive with your workout or core strengthening versus making sure that you don't have basically the condition where you are higher risk of fractures, especially in areas like the hands and the feet and so forth. So what's sort of related to osteoporosis? Things like respiratory issues, gastrointestinal complications can actually impact you. So for example, when osteoporosis affects the vertebrae, it can lead to kyphosis, if I pronounce it correctly. So it's an abnormal curvature of the spine. so to speak. So this can compress the abdomen and chest, potentially causing respiratory issues due to restricted lung expansion. So you're curved, your posture's off because of this progressive disease. And then, of course, it'll impact everything else because things are pinched off, so to speak. So your gut, your respiratory may be impacted, so that may lead to further complications. So systemic health decline happens, end stage osteoporosis. When you hear an illness, when someone has osteoporosis, but they pass away from something else, it's because this is an underlying condition. And so, for example, reduced mobility will lead to decreased blood circulation. And of course, everything is sort of connected. And so the risk of blood clots and heart disease, all of these are all interconnected. So I will share here with you the relation that can happen with shared bone vascular risk factors between osteoporosis and vascular disease. So things like falls, history, inadequate calcium, estrogen loss, which happens over time, of course, especially estrogen loss. In the vascular disease, it's the male sex, hypertension, things like that. And of course, if you look at the overlapping, they actually are interconnected. Things like poor diet is one, low vitamin D, and of course, excessive alcohol intake can impact you, smoking, things like that. So we spoke about women. I know that most people think that this disease or this condition is strictly related to women, especially if you're going through the change of life, but men also get osteoporosis. So it's not just a women's disease. Bone health might not be, on your radar. So if there's a man in your life, whether it's young or young at heart, also this is something you have to look out for, pay attention to. The person who's actually going through this may sort of like, brush it off and think, oh, it's just age, or it's just, my wrist is hurting or something's happening. I just feel a little bit weak today. But these are little silent indicators that you need to look out for. So men, in addition to women, considering bone health, it actually develops less often in men, but it happens nonetheless. So those who experience a rapid hormone change in life, men, have something called andropause, which is not here, but there's such a thing called andropause. Women have menopause, men have andropause. So the bone loss in men starts later in life, more so than the men. But of course, they have a larger skeletal frame than women, so sometimes it's overlooked. But men, mid-60s, unless of course they have a family history of that, it actually has the loss of bone mass at the same rate as women actually happens once they hit mid-60s. So cause of osteoporosis in men, for example, usually happens or affects older men. Doesn't mean that it's exclusive to older men. It can happen in younger as well, but it can cause by a variety of factors, as I mentioned before, age-related bone loss, loss of lifestyle, chronic medical conditions, same as women. And of course, we look at things like low levels of testosterone. So for example, as we progress in life, includes me too, men may sort of like not look at, okay, lower testosterone could be, you may have an issue with your prostate, but really could also lead to bone loss because your body needs a healthy balance in the amount of testosterone in men and women, of course, especially if they go through the change of life, hormones. So for example, prolonged use, as I mentioned, with the steroids, and all of these can actually impact you or men and women, but they also think of other types of conditions. So for example, someone's diagnosed with hypertension, which is very dominant in the of ethnicities. I'm not too sure of the Caucasian population, but I know, for example, in my culture, in my family, hypertension is a big thing, especially in the Caribbean. So hypertension, diabetes, high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, they're all linked. So when one system becomes imbalanced, it can actually impact the rest. So it's just like, for example, you're taking a medication for one thing, and then you have other underlying condition because of the risk and side effects. But think of your body being imbalanced. So there is a connection. So what can happen if you're being diagnosed with hypertension, or you're at risk of having hypertension based on your diet, your family genetics, different things can happen. Also be mindful that you have to do the right things to be able to avoid, getting osteoporosis or delaying it at least the best that you can. So high blood pressure is increasing the loss of the calcium, especially through your urine. If you're thinking of how do you lose calcium? Well, first of all, you're not consuming the right amount, and then of course you pass it out if your body's not absorbing it the way it's supposed to, because calcium is needed for bone health. So if it's compromised and is a threat, this impacts not only, your bone health, but other things as well. So as your body loses the calcium via, urine, it can pull all of the stored calcium from your bones. And maintaining calcium homeostasis in your blood can be a balancing act. So, for example, if you're diabetic and you find that you're going to the bathroom quite often, you're pre-diabetic, you're actually urinating a lot more, you're picking up more calcium, or you're taking, water pills, and you're actually having more urination, frequent urination, or other things. This is also you losing calcium without you even realizing it, unless you do the once a year where you're checking your calcium and your vitamin D. Those who are going through menopause, of course, there's postmenopausal symptoms. One of them would be osteoporosis. If you're not sort of taking the initiative now, it's never too late, unless, of course, you're in the final stage, but there's ways you can actually help your body to maintain what you currently have or to improve it. So postmenopausal osteoporosis occurs when the body's natural process of bone formation is disrupted, again, imbalance. So during menopause, the levels of estrogen drop significantly. And we don't know these things are happening to us because it's on the inside. We may feel a little bit off, can't put our fingers on it, but this plays a key role in bone health. So without this type of estrogen in the body, which may not help, the bones can't form the way it's meant to, or sort of strengthen the way it's meant to, because it's not receiving the right type of nutrients. So this will lead to weaker muscles over time, more fractures, more falls, and things like that. So there are several risk factors for postmenopausal osteoporosis, including a family history of osteoporosis I mentioned before, being too thin, having a small frame. All these things can have sort of stack up against you in a way of higher risk of osteoporosis, or we call it brittle bone disease. Women who have had early menopause, which is defined as menopause occurring before the age of 45, are higher risk. So, for example, my sister, she went into full-blown, I think, perimenopause at 38, and then she's younger than me, but she's fully into menopause state right now, and I think she's just past it. So this can happen depending, of course, of when your menopause comes into place, what happens to you, but be mindful of that as well. So what can you do to help prevent it? So one of the things is physiotherapy. If you're currently working and you have a plan where you get some benefits, consider investing your time and your energy into doing some physiotherapy. If you've had, for example, you've been told that you have early stages, this is something you can do. Developing good healthy habits of caring for yourself can reduce the impact on your bones or your bone health by gradually improving it over time with regular exercise, of course, depending on your abilities. And some people who have underlying conditions, for example, I have a friend who has fibromyalgia. She can't do too much exercise because it works against her. So work within your abilities, speak with someone who can help you, who's trained to at least start you off on the path to exercising consistently. There's things like chair yoga, there's aqua fitness, things that will have less impact on your joints, can help you to start off. So there are things you can do to be able to help yourself so that you're not going to suffer through osteoporosis, which can help. You can do certain things to lessen the impact on your body as you age. So physiotherapy can significantly help you in this way, but it also helps to strengthen your bone structure, your core, your posture. Also can help prevent bone thinning, believe it or not. It actually helps to reduce the risk of fall because it's helping with your balance and also your movement and managing pain. It also, keep in mind as well, bone is a living tissue. So like any other living tissue in the body, it can improve by various forms of exercise. And it doesn't matter what stage you are in your life, it's never too late to start investing in yourself, right? Which comes to your health. So lifestyle modification, things I mentioned before, like quitting smoking, can happen. Now, if it's a habit you've had for many, many years, it might be challenging. But at least if you can start off with reducing the amount of time that you smoke and reduce the amount of time that you consume alcohol, can help you to create, healthy habits over time until you've made that conscious decision to quit smoking and to either, if it's a quit consuming alcohol, or reducing the amount you have on a daily or weekly basis. So this can actually have a positive impact on your bone health over time, and also for prevention steps you can take to help you in actually having a better lifestyle once you make these decisions. So, for example, if you take the necessary steps to make your living environment safer is one thing. Making sure that you're aware of your environment is the second thing. Making sure that you have, things like handrails and lighting in your home. If you're going out, you have no control over that, but be mindful of the area that you're in. These are things you also have to look into put into practice. But things like if you decide to be, more active in your exercise, these are things you sort of have to map out for us to know where you're going with friends, making sure that you don't have a issue with your environment to reduce the risk of falling. Medication also can help strengthen your bones, depending on what you've been advised. The other natural ways you can take, but this is also something I want to be responsible in saying, because if you're taking medication now for osteoporosis, we're not saying to stop taking it. There are actually some side effects to pharmaceutical medicine, but at least for what I'm sharing here today is just to be responsible and sharing with you that there are different ways you can have to help your body to, over time, to strengthen your bone. Hormone replacement therapy can also be a factor, one of the things you can consider if it's aligns with what you want to do with your goals for, strengthening your bone health. Supplementation, I mentioned before, vitamin D, calcium, these actually help to strengthen your bones. But at times we tend to be misinformed. We are told, okay, take a multivitamin. Well, the vitamin D in the multivitamins may have, let's say, 333 international units, whereas your body might need about 3,000 to 5,000 international units. So you're not getting the daily supplements, right? So you need to be able to be aware of that to know what you can take so that your body's getting the right amount of dosage. Weight-bearing exercise helps with engaging in weight-bearing things like walking, jogging, if you're able to jog, lifting weights. You can start off with the small weights, and that helps over time to increase your bone density. And if you find that you're not motivated to do that, join a club, join a group, 2 or 3 people, do something that you can actually help you stay motivated on track so that you're accountable to you and the people in your small group or large group, so that you feel encouraged to go out there every day and to be able to maximize your exercise routine so that you can be a healthy version of you, showing up for yourself every day. So stress also impacts you, and poor health impacts you as well. Poor sleep, both have negative impact on your bone health, and you're not seeing it because it's on the inside. But over time, like I said, it's a silent killer, so to speak, because you don't realize how stress impacts the bones, how stress impacts your sleep. You're not sleeping enough can actually have a domino effect on your bone health and your overall health, including your cardiovascular and other things as well. So the main impact of stress on the bone health, it can be an emotional experience. We talk about, most people don't realize it, that most of your emotions, all the emotions are stored in your gastrointestinal tract. So if you're overly stressed, you're internalizing it. It's not you're suppressing it. It actually is impacting you in a negative way. So think of it this way, that if there's no outlet, there's nothing you can do to de-stress, or you find that your sleep is sort of fragmented, or you have broken sleep, over time it has a long-lasting negative impact. So stress can profoundly, impact your physiological effects. So for example, if you have high levels of hormone cortisol, this can actually lead to damaging your bone health. So how do we do all of this? I'll share with you in a moment. So cortisol and bone density are sort of linked. So high levels of cortisol can lead to a decrease in bone density, or it's also known as cortisol interference with your bone building process. The longer you sleep, the longer your body can repair itself. The longer you sleep, and especially in REM state, your bone and all of your cells, everything helps to regenerate. So it's called osteoblast. So the impact or the disturbance of your body, having too much cortisol and your bone density, if it actually negatively impacts you, not only are you impacting your sleep pattern, everything else, it actually breaks down your bone, the strength or the bone health. So this happens over a period of time. So the imbalance is likely to result in weaker muscles and higher risk of fractures. I can share with you one thing as well. I'm going to sort of digress a little bit. There are histories of studies have done, and I've actually had this happen within my family. A cousin's wife was taking a particular medication for diabetes. And it actually was one of those really strong diabetic medication in the US. And the doctor knew what the situation was, what the side effects were, didn't explain it to his wife. She had one fall and she broke her pelvic bone. They had to rush her to New York. And of course, she had to have metal rods, steel, to support her to walk. But that was because the medication ate away at the bone itself was eroded because of the medication. So there's many things you have to put in place that you don't even realize is happening to you because you're taking one thing, or you're not sleeping enough, you're not doing all these things. And so the bone has no chance to sort of regenerate or to be able to help it to repair. So the role of sleep in bone health is also very vital. During as I mentioned before, during sleep, undergoes repair and regeneration. But if you're consuming things or taking medication that sort of counteracts it, you have to be mindful of that as well. There's something called bone remodeling. It's a process in which old bone tissue is replaced by new tissue. And if you're not sleeping or have insufficient sleep, that can disrupt this cycle. Growth hormone stimulation can happen as well. So deep sleep stimulates the release of growth hormones. This is essential for bone growth and repair. So poor sleep, disrupted sleep can actually, sort of do the reverse and have your bone health being compromised, which we aren't even aware of because it's happening on the inside. But of course, there's small indicators that you can pay attention to. Balance and coordination can be off, so chronic sleep deprivation can impair balance. You wonder why you're sort of hitting yourself or bumping into walls or you're falling, in a certain case or slipping, your coordination is off. This actually is impacting you, can have a lingering effect or lasting effect on your bone health, which can actually compromise it. So these are things to be mindful of. So what can you do? Consider changing your eating habit, incorporating more things that you may not even realize. So a diet enriched in fruits and vegetables we hear has a lot of antioxidants and pretty good for anti-inflammatory. But what do you eat? Of course, I would say to you, start journaling what you're eating now and sort of incorporate over time. And of course, it can be, hit your walls in a different way, but knowing that you're investing in your health can have you, a better quality of life as you age. Because, we might say, oh, things are too expensive. Buying this type of fruit versus a vegetable, having this type of protein might be expensive for now, but your health care be more expensive as you age because you're not getting the right nutrients. So quality of life is what you have to determine as to what you want to do as of today. Now, some people can't eat certain things because of underlying conditions. So, of course, you can tailor make a plan or speak to a dietitian or a naturopathic doctor to help you, maybe both of them, to help you to put together a plan that you can actually consume the right type of nutrients that comes from different sources. So things like colorful fruits and vegetables into your meal, being, mindful of that, practicing self-awareness of what you eat, what you put in is what experience, and what you ingest is what your body responds, and what you pass out is what the body actually is helping you either to detoxify or adding to your chronic pain or your challenges you're having, including osteoporosis. Adequate amount of protein, the right kind, is important, making sure that you don't get farm-fed fish or farm-grown instead of meats and chicken that are fed a lot of antibiotics, because that can actually have an adverse effect or a negative effect on your health. Being mindful of that as well to make sure you choose the right things, make sure you read labels as best as you can, because remember, you're your best doctor. You know best how your body is responding. You take something, you know how the body responds. It doesn't lie. It tells you exactly how it feels. The role of vitamin D, as I mentioned before, is super, super, super important. We actually, all of us, I can say, are deficient in some way or form, especially if you're of, my skin color or even darker or lighter. Your body is meant to put the melatonin in your skin, protects you from the sun, but it also actually blocks the vitamin D. So taking something that will help you in the way of the fortified foods, your diets, in what you consume, the amount of vitamin D supplements you can take in addition to the regular foods you're eating can help you to not be as depleted in vitamin D, especially in the winter months that are coming very soon. We're ending summer, so I don't even want to think about the winter months yet. But preparing your body for that actually will help you with your longevity and your bone health. Calcium, I mentioned, if you were to consume vitamin D and calcium together, the calcium helps your, and the vitamin D, it helps to absorb into your body versus just taking one on its own. So calcium-rich food, like if you don't do dairy products, find a supplement for that. Green leafy vegetables, fortified foods, these are all crucial for your minerals for your bone health. Avoid excessive consumption and measure of certain things like alcohol, but also keep in mind that if you're consuming alcohol, like any medication you're taking, it can interfere with the absorption of calcium. So it gives you a higher risk of fractures if you're not mindful of that. So what does calcium absorption mean? Well, there's certain levels of stress that we experience in high, intense moments in the life. And so your cortisol level will raise, your hormones will be sort of out of imbalance. It can impact your digestive stress, you're internalizing all of this sort of stress. And so, of course, your body cannot absorb the calcium the way it's meant to because you're highly, highly stressed. So what does it do? You actually pass it through your urination because it doesn't know what to do. It just sort of, you urinate. So the calcium is critical for, as you know, is for bone density. If you have insufficient absorption, again, it leads to bone density. So again, it's a balancing act. If you're not able to get the right amount of nutrients through calcium through your regular food, there are many ways you can do that. Like, for example, calcium supplements, if you're able to. And of course, the right kind of calcium is actually very important. Omega-3s are very important. They have anti-inflammatory properties, supporting your bone health. Collagen supplements as well. If you want to go through collagen as an option, it actually improves your bone density and helps with reducing, the fracture as well. Magnesium is very good. I actually take magnesium as well along with other things. It's really good for your bone health, but also for your heart. It actually helps to de-stress the body. It helps with your bone density. It can actually influence how effective your other nutrients absorb into your body, like vitamin D and calcium. Think of whole foods, as I mentioned before, protein and calcium. So make sure you're sort of mindful of all of that. Here's a surprising fact. I did not know this. It's one of my favorite fruit. Plums. Dry plums, actually, there's a study that shows that if you have about 6 to 7 plums sort of in a given time, it actually helps to boost your digestion, but also strengthen your bone strength, help your bone strength. That's actually a good thing for me because it's one of my favorite things. So these are things that we don't realize how good they are until you sort of do your due diligence. But a mindful thing I want to sort of like for you to be mindful of is we may tend to gravitate to processed food, especially if we're highly stressed. I tend to gravitate to certain things if I'm like either stressed, not so much sugary, but sometimes a burger here and there is, those things are sort of okay ever so often. But if you find yourself gravitating to a lot of processed food and sugary food to combat how you're feeling in, let's say you have going through stress or anxiety or other things that you're going through that you can't manage, and you gravitate to that, you actually sort of impacting your bone health and other things as well. So just be mindful how much you consume in the way of processed food. Even if you're having chips and those type of things, be mindful of that. Here's a link I found through through Harvard about bone health, so you can actually take a screen capture if you wish to. And the last thing, before I go into the other part of what I'm sharing, and we wrap up in a few minutes, consider things like a superfood. Now we have superfood, this term superfood, but they have so much more nutrients than actual food that you're consuming for your energy consumption. So superfood can come in the way of turmeric, it can come in the way of blueberries, walnuts, different things like pumpkin seeds. But I like those things. But for me, I've actually found an amazing whole new world of mushrooms. Now, put this into context. I don't like mushrooms. I don't like the texture of it, but for somehow I fell in love with these. And this actually because of what I'm able to witness and to experience myself and also be able to share with others. So put into perspective, let's say, for example, you like avocados, which I'm not a fan of avocados, my husband is, and you would have, let's say, half of an avocado. Well, you can actually get the in the dosage 7 in the way of the quantity you need. You need to eat about 7 avocados to get the amount of antioxidants you would need in mushrooms. Now, the mushroom I'm speaking of is 3 types. One is reishi, which I never heard about until 14 years ago. It's also called Ganoderma lucidum. There's also another one, is lion's mane and cordyceps. Lion's mane is new to my world, but it's been about for thousands of years. But just to put in comparison as to the nutrients you receive, you would need to drink at least 54 cups of green tea to get the nutrients you need and the way of antioxidants, minerals, vitamins, and so forth in a single dose of reishi or Ganoderma. So if you look at it this way, how many oranges can you have in a day? How many, about heads of garlic can you have in a day? How many cups of strawberries can you have in a day? Everything is in balance, right? It's sort of, everything's a balancing act. Well, this actual superfood you can actually take in addition to or complementing anything else you're taking. So for example, if you're consuming your types of foods you're having, or you're actually taking a sort of pharmaceutical, there's over 3,000 case studies just in this mushroom alone. It's considered a functional mushroom, sorry, a medicine, a food mushroom, as well as a medicinal mushroom. So it's part of 2 worlds. But the great thing about it is that there's a way you can consume it. There's 2 ways. You can consume it as a tincture, which is very bitter, or you can consume it in other things where it's infused into there where you won't taste the bitterness but experience the benefit. So we know it's called Ganoderma lucidum. It took me a while, about 6 months to pronounce this word, when I first heard about it. But it's highly nutritious, low in carbs, high in nutrition. It actually has been used in the Asian culture, especially for those who've had heart condition or taking heart medication. The doctors in Japan actually are advising people to take this actual Ganoderma lucidum in addition to their medication because it helps you with protecting your organs, helps to flush out toxins, which happens sometimes with some medication. And as I share that with you, think of you consuming your food every day, but not getting the right nutrients. What if you were to have a superfood in addition to what you consume in the way of your daily recommended dose of foods that, is suggested, with your, in your carbs, your proteins, and so forth. And you would add on that something that helps you with your overall well-being. So, for example, as I mentioned to you, lion's mane, cordyceps, and Ganoderma, these are my go-to in the way of the world of mushroom. They're very, actually high in the properties for anti-inflammatory and also helps with your overall well-being in your lifestyle. Not only does it support your sleep, circulation, your energy, helping you with oxygenating your body and your mind as well as your gut. It has so many other things, including supporting the immune system. And I'm sharing this with you because I'm actually so proud of the fact that I discovered this, my husband and I discovered this brand. This brand is actually where we started our journey with wellness. We discovered wellness through this company called Organo, a Canadian company here in Canada. And we discovered the power of Ganoderma through our own consumption as customers first. And then we decided we want to promote and be ambassadors for this brand because the bite doesn't lie, it tells you exactly how you feel. And we want to share that goodness with others by sharing this with others who we know and we believe in our heart can help others, especially on their health journey. So we're a brand with a purpose. We help people create better lives in a way of health and wellness, and of course, helping them to live a better, more fruitful life when it comes to their health. In Canada here, we actually have a natural product number with Health Canada that states it supports the immune system. This particular brand or this actual patent we have on this superfood. And this superfood not only does it help with your immune system, it helps to fight infections and other diseases. And so think of something you're consuming every single day that can help your body, give your body what it needs, because the body can heal itself if it's given the right things. So the perfect example is we know on the market there's certified organic that are grown in plastic bags for different type of mushrooms on the market. And then there's the other way of making it, which is naturally grown on plum logs. So we are very happy to say that we are ethically sourced and it's naturally grown and organically grown. So we have a patent for that. We have multiple qualifications over 32 plus. And so we are the only ones that have the exclusive and powerful ingredient as nature intended. Now, the reason I say this, the actual, what you're seeing on the right, this is considered organic, certified organic, because it's free of pesticides. If you look on the left, it's nice and bright and brownish red. Well, this is because it's actually grown in a way that you can go into multiple stages, which I'll share with you in a second. So what does that mean for you and I? Well, as I mentioned before, the actual mushroom is very bitter if you boil it into a tincture. But what if you could actually switch your brand of your coffee, tea, or hot cocoa with this infused into it, where you can't taste the bitterness, you taste the gourmet flavors of these amazing beverages, and you're witnessing and experiencing your body responding in a way that you can tell how it's working because the body doesn't lie. So you have anything from our black coffees to our teas to flavored brands of our beverages in the way of lattes and mochas and hot cocoa, which are most of my favorites here. Also comes in pharmaceutical dosage, which is in capsule form. It also comes in the toothpaste. I mentioned to you before that I had receding gums. Well, actually, this is one of the toothpastes I used back then and actually helps me with my gums. Many of the things because it has the Ganadum infused into it with no fluoride. Just had to put that in there. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to practice mindfulness, positivity, and wellness like you. I'm sure you do. But what if you were to take one choice and that can have a lasting impact on your health and the well-being of you and your household? And this is what I'm sharing with you. I mentioned before these three, I won't go into them as well, but we know the main thing is that supports your and promotes health benefits, your overall well-being. So I'm going to show you these facts, this information I'm sharing with you. Excuse me. So the PubMed studies we show, and we're going to go through them quickly, not by line. Some I'm going to pinpoint as to where you see them in blue. The osteoprotective effects it has. These are PubMed studies through PubMed.gov. It actually has protective effects on your bones, especially your articular cartilage. It helps with many of the things, as I mentioned before, can be complementary and as use or for alternative use. And of course, it has many other nutrients in there that can help you. PubMed also, my findings, it actually helps with not only with the Ganadum but the cordyceps, because we know these three work in synergy together or on their own, but it helps with your bone stability, helping with your different steps of bone formation, as I mentioned before, and something called resorption, which actually helps with your growth of your bones. It helps with many other things as well, but I wanted just to pinpoint those things. So the Ganadum allucinum on its own exhibits anti-osteoporosis effects, which helps, of course, as you're consuming it, it helps with your gut, which is your gut and your brain, gut and your body, gut and your bones, helps as well. And also, not only that, are you thinking of osteoporosis? People who have rheumatoid arthritis, it's helped to help with that. And these are all studies done by credible sources. The Ganadum itself is anti-inflammatory, but also helps to distress the body. It actually helps reduce any type of anxiety you're going through, especially if you're going through these type of conditions like osteoporosis. Not only that, it can be used to prevent bone loss in the femur. It can actually help with your structural deterioration of your femur, but other parts of your body, bone structure as well, because it actually has a very high dose of flavonoids and polysaccharides. So this is where the antioxidants and the anti-inflammatory properties come into effect. People who have issues with sleeping, especially sleeping and having stress, which impacts their bone health, this actually helps with the stress and helps you with a better quality of sleep. So many of the things that we know that are interconnected helps you because of this one superfood. So imagine if you're consuming this and you notice over time how your body's actually improving over time. I mentioned before about the cordyceps. There's something called oxidative stress that the body actually, it works against the body. And so, and the body's heating capability. So this actual two, Ganoderma and cordyceps, helps with the protecting against this type of stress. I mentioned before as well that not only has high amounts of nutrients, but what it does, it protects your organs, your cells, and many other things backed by science and, of course, the research. And, of course, keep in mind, this is not through our company. These are credible sources for a third party. The capsules I mentioned before come in different forms. I'm going to actually show it to you. This is one of them, which is the Ganoderma lucidum. You can see the screen. This is the fruiting body, as you can see to the left. The spores actually come in as the seeds to make more, and the mycelium are the roots. So they all have benefits, but they grow in 3 stages because it's organically grown naturally. The difference, as I mentioned before, is the absorption rate, how it's grown. Naturally grown, you get 99% absorption rate in your body, where it stays there, versus the other brands that are actually plastic grown, and you have between 4 to 13% absorption in your body. So you can search it, Google it, wherever you want to get the product, making sure you're getting the right quality, because what you put in is what your body experiences. So if you think of unlocking the full potential of this, think of Ganoderma in the way of different stages of growth. They have many benefits. I consume them every day. I actually have them in the form of beverages as well, but think of it as how it can help your overall well-being. I mentioned before about the Ganoderma, but lion's mane also has this particular benefit where it exhibits anti-osteoporosis effects between the two, and it comes in the form of, I'm going to show you in a second, where we have all 3 under one of the products. But cordyceps, as I mentioned before, has many benefits. But I want to bring to you the last at the bottom of the page, where it shows that the cordyceps actually helps with bone loss, especially for those who are going through postmenopausal osteoporosis. It helps with the gut and, of course, immune and underlying potential for therapeutic agents. So basically, a therapeutic dose of that can help you with that. Many other things I'm going to mention before. As you go through your stage of life, consider as you want to consume something that can help you with your longevity of life. This red tea has both the reishi as well as the the cordyceps. And I love this one because actually has become one of my go-to. And it's a caffeine-free tea that has these 2 infused. So you're consuming the tea and having all the benefits that your body needs. The lion's mane I mentioned before not only helps with cognition, mental energy, but also helps in your natural antioxidants that it needs, and also it's anti-osteoporotic, nutraceutical and functional foods. So again, just to make it into layman's term, gut, brain, bone, body, it helps with all those. This is where I'm sharing with you the actual product that has all 3, which is a Royal. It's a black coffee. So if you're drinking coffee, this would be a great way to switch. So you can consider as something that you can consume at least for 30, 60, 90 days. And from that, you're able to make a decision as to how your body is responding to it. How do you benefit as we wrap up this? Basically, think of it this way. If you give yourself a challenge to switch the brand, at least for 30, 60, 90 days, the promotion right now that's going on in North America, if you were to get at least 2 boxes of a product or one of the capsules, as I mentioned before, you would not pay any shipping because it comes from our office at Victoria, BC in Canada. And of course, we have shipping locations in warehouses in the US. You would get that try for 30, 60, 90 days, and you also get an extra 10% off when you order. And there's other ways you can get an additional 25% off. So you can sort of speak to the person who invited you. So as I share this with you, I just wanted to, again, just have you consider in a way that you would think of what is the journey you want to get on or to start in the way of your health. And I'm seeing some comments here. I actually try to read that. If you have a question, please, you can take yourself off of mute and ask, but I'm going to read the notes here as well to see if I can address some of the questions here as well. And please feel free in a safe environment so you can ask away. All right, so I have Carmen is asking a couple questions here. So it says here, it's the reduction of my spinal cord and gets painful in my lower back like sciatic. So I resist to it to keep active. Okay, sciatic is something that happens. Like my cousin, she has sciatic. Physiotherapy is what she's been doing. I have a lower back injury. I did physiotherapy, but there's a difference between there's two types of physiotherapy that I've learned because of my sessions. One is called passive physiotherapy and active physiotherapy. And that actually, I had to do active to strengthen my lower back and my core, and that helps with reducing. So my lower back, I didn't have sciatic, but because of the intensity and where I got the injury, it started traveling down my thigh. And so with that type of workout and the exercise I did every day, I don't have that issue. It didn't go away, but I don't have the severity of it. So again, consult with someone, physiotherapist, about active physiotherapy to see how they can help you with that. I do know with the capsules and the products, it actually helps with reducing pain. But to what level of severity you have, again, as you're consuming it, you can tell from your body what's going to happen because it's actually experiencing, what your nutrients you're receiving. And the other question about the white wine for dinner, I don't know if it's bad or not. Of course, you have to make that decision on your own. But again, if you're having other underlying issues and you're consuming a bit more alcohol than the average occasional time, you may want to reduce it. I'm not saying that you have to eliminate it, but of course, reduce it and just pay attention to your body, how it's responding. Again, this is what would be something I would suggest. And of course, great that you're practicing yoga. That's awesome. I love that. I have to get into that as well. And there's another questions about vitamin D. Okay, so the elements are full of, I'm sorry, I'm not sure on this one with the vitamin D. Could you just tell me what that means? Okay, so basically it is
Wanted,
a, hi.
I just wanted to know exactly where the um uh I would say, oh my goodness, I forgot the word in English. What kind of food can I eat to provide the amount of vitamin D besides the vitamin D3 that I take in pills? Because I don't believe in too much in pills. I believe more in
So,
the way I
right, so
eat.
vitamin D3, I take it. I consume it. Just make sure you do your research on the right type of brand to take. Because the
Oh,
vitamin D3, our body naturally makes it, but not sufficient because we're not exposed to the sun like we are here in Canada. You get 6 months of winter, right? So I mean, under
okay.
artificial light. So I take about 3 to 4,000 units, international units of the vitamin D3. But again, I would say to you, the amount of foods you're eating would not be sufficient to get the right dose. So first of all, what you need to do is do a test, blood work, and then
Okay.
speak to your doctor. Let them determine from what they're getting that you're deficient or you're okay.
And
That's
oregano has also vitamin D.
the reishi itself has a healthy amount of
Okay.
minerals and vitamins you need, which is what your body needs as well. But I take both. I take my consumption of my capsules as well as vitamin D3.
I noticed that you have three type of capsules over there. So,
Yes.
uh, so um, can you explain me a little bit more about the differences between one and each other?
Sure. I'm just going to stop this right now. So, because we're going over an hour, I'm going to stop so we can continue the conversation. So, as
Okay.
we go through this, thank you all for joining. I'm just going to end this live chat I have here, and then we get to stay on the call so I can ask the question. Thanks again for joining the Health Talk, and have a blessed day. Let me just stop this for now. Awesome.